Greetings from ASCO here in Chicago in 2018. My name is Dr. Wilky. I'm a medical oncologist and assistant professor at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of Miami in Florida. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about some of the updates that we're learning at the ASCO meeting so far, and to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Wilky. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today at ASCO. My one question is, I know it's still early in ASCO, but what is your current takeaway that you would like patients to be aware of in terms of the current research going on and being presented here today?
Right, so it's always exciting to be at ASCO and to hear the latest and greatest information being presented about sarcomas and about clinical research and new trials and new drugs that might be available. So far, it's still quite early in the meeting, but one thing I thought was really interesting actually took place before the meeting at our SARC clinical trial gathering. So this is a meeting where we talk about new strategies, how we can work better together to get treatment options for patients. And the theme of this meeting was actually osteosarcoma this year, but what they said and the way they were thinking about how to do trials for osteosarcoma is something that I think leiomyosarcoma patients can also benefit from. Basically, the idea is we can use genetic information to try to separate out patients with the same type of sarcoma into different groups or baskets. So for example, in leiomyosarcoma, there are people that have very different genetic mutations or mistakes that drive their cancers. These can be different depending on the site. So for example, if your leiomyosarcoma was in the uterus or if it was in an arm or a leg, sometimes those genes can be different. But I think that it's going to be really interesting to start to design clinical trials where you match the treatment with your particular genetic mutation. And this is the entire theme of this year's ASCO is precision medicine. We're basically matching the right patient to the right treatment at the right time.
That's really interesting. We'll look forward to hearing more about that for sure. And my other question is, are people trying to start to study about the microbiome and its potential effect in the microenvironment in the immune system?
Absolutely. So the microbiome basically means in our GI tract, in our gastrointestinal tract, our stomach, our intestines, we have a ton of natural bacteria. Okay? And those bacteria are really important for helping to keep us in balance and leading to healthy colons and basically keeping us from getting bad infections as well. So it's a delicate balance between all of these different types, hundreds of different types of bacteria in our guts. Now, what people have found is that actually what type of bacteria you have in your gut may actually predict or be associated with a good outcome with immune therapy. So remember that immune therapy means these new drugs that are designed to unleash the brakes on our immune system, or basically to block don't eat me signals that your cancer cells might have that are keeping your immune system from being able to recognize and attack your cancer cells. So in other types of cancers that have been treated with immune therapy, the more diverse or the more different bugs you have in your bowel, it seems like people are doing better with immune-based treatments. Now, we are just at the beginning of immune therapy for sarcoma, and so we haven't really looked into what the microbiome means for patients, or certainly not to be able to test someone's stool and tell you whether or not you're going to respond to immune therapy. But I think that's where we're headed, and there are investigators who are beginning to look at that as part of clinical trials.
That's very interesting. That's great. And I understand that ASCO has been talking about and will be presenting this week about how to redesign clinical trials, making them smaller instead of large. Have you heard of that, and what is your opinion of it?
Absolutely. So the key is the whole goal of doing this is to try to get patients to effective treatments faster. So historically, for a drug to get approved, it took years and years to get through the whole process, through the initial safety type trials to the middle of the road trials where you were trying to see if the drug was actually working. And then the phase 3 trials are where the new drug is compared to a standard treatment usually, or a placebo even, with a sugar pill, which we all know how unhappy people are about being treated with a sugar pill. And then if all those things were positive, if everything turned out, then the drug could finally be approved and get to patients. So the idea is, how can we design smarter trials to take advantage of every single patient, every single thing we learn, to get drugs approved that are likely to be helpful faster, and to not waste time and money and patience on treatments that are unlikely to be effective. And there's a couple ways to do that. One thing is to do better science before we actually design the clinical trials. So either in mice, I know animal studies are controversial, but mice are actually our best friend when it comes to looking at activity of drugs in the laboratory before we start treating patients. So doing better science, understanding how drugs are working instead of just trying them, and maybe even knowing, like I was talking about earlier, if a drug is designed to block protein B, then let's make sure we're looking at protein B in patients to see if the patients that have higher levels or lower levels are more or less likely to respond. There's also other types of statistics now where you can learn more from a smaller number of patients. There's certain types of methods that we're using more and more, especially in rare diseases like sarcomas, where funding is limited and the number of patients are limited.
Plus, it would help the patient with their expense
Absolutely.
issues
No, absolutely.
and financial constraints.
Exactly.
And physical
Get the
constraints.
insurances to be able to cover drugs faster. But really, it's the problem is that many trials that look very promising in the phase 2, the second part of the research, once they get to the phase 3, they become negative trials. They don't pan out. It's just something about a small number of patients where it looked better than it is, and that's incredibly hard for patients and doctors and the drug companies to deal with. So the smarter we can be along the way, the better off.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wilky. I really appreciate your time today and visiting with the patients, and I know this will be very informative for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great ASCO.
Thank you.